When I was 22 years old, I graduated from college, I joined the Peace Corps, and I went to Malawi. And in Malawi they have sayings, and one of their sayings is, "Umodzi muli mphamvu." And what that means is, as one, you are strong. Together you're powerful. And I thought that was really beautiful for Malawi. For myself, I'd always had trouble with groups, always had trouble fitting in. It felt like I either had to join your group and compromise myself, my feelings, my values, or stand by myself, be my true self, but be alone. And what I learned in Malawi is that that's actually a false choice. That the most powerful groups need people being their fullest, bravest selves, and that when you're part of a group, when I was part of a group that was healthy and alive, I tapped into a power that was much bigger than myself. So about 18 months into my time in Malawi, my friend's wife became very ill. We rushed down to find her at the house, and it turned out she had meningitis compounded by HIV. She'd been at the hospital, but the treatment wasn't working and they'd sent her home to die. And my friend and I were able to get her back into the hospital and to work with her family to get her on some new treatment. And in the process of that, I realized how serious this disease was. And I also realized how powerful and deadly the stigma and the silence were. And I realized that I'd been keeping silent. In the village where I lived, a woman named Rose Chimoa had been like a mother to me. Ever since I showed up in the village, she took care of me. She showed me how to wash clothes, how to take water. She invited me into her family's home every day to eat food. And a few months after I'd been there, I'd watched Rose's husband start to get sick. He got skinnier and skinnier. He got sores in his mouth and his throat, and he passed away. And I asked her, "Rose, do you think he had HIV?" And she said, "No. He got tested, I got tested, the whole family got tested. It wasn't HIV." And I took her word for it, because what else could I do? But then after I realized how powerful the disease was, and how powerful the stigma and the silence were, I insisted that she go and get tested at the hospital. And the next day, Rose and I were sitting on her concrete porch, painted red, pieces of concrete missing, and we're looking out over the gullies with banana trees in them, green. And she tells me she has HIV. And I start to cry, and she tells me, "No, you can't cry. Because if you cry, then I'll cry, and the children are going to wonder what's going on, and I'm not ready to tell them." And I was blown away by this woman's strength. I wanted to help her, but I didn't know how. 2 weeks later, I was down by the lake shore, and I met a woman named Gertrude Ngoma. Gertrude's a Malawian woman, and she's HIV positive. But when I met her, I was surprised because she looks healthy. She looks vibrantly alive, and she's not ashamed of herself. She's proud to be who she is. And so I said, "Gertrude, I live up there on that mountain. And if you can come up there, there's some people I'd really like you to meet and talk to, because I think they really need to meet you." And I didn't think she'd come, because it was far. It was a big climb up the mountain. A week later, she showed up at my house. And she stayed with my mother, with Rose Chimoa, and Gertrude and I went together around the village and sat down and talked to people. And I remember sitting and talking to one woman, a woman whose husband had died and who I'd been to the funeral of her young daughter. And Gertrude sat there and she told her story of losing her husband to HIV and then almost dying herself with grief and sickness, when a friend of her husband's came to her and said, "Gertrude, who will take care of your children?" And she accepted help from that man, and she got on treatment, and she started doing much better. And as she's telling this story, I wanted to jump in and offer some suggestions, some insight I had. And Gertrude stopped me. She said, "John, no, I've got this." And she did. She had it. There was something about her message and the way she told her story that attracted people. And that night, 10 people showed up at my house. And they were there to talk about this thing that nobody could talk about. And Gertrude told them about positive living groups. Groups of men and women that help each other to get education and nutrition, medical attention, and support each other socially. So the HIV positive status went from being a silent death sentence to be this positive rallying point, this source of hope. And that group that got started that night kept going long after I left the village. Most recently, I heard that they'd gotten a bicycle to help each other get to the hospital. They'd started farming a plot of maize to make food for the times of hunger. And they'd even gotten on the radio to share their message. And so, what I learned from that experience was that good groups need people to stand up and be their strongest selves in order to come together. And then by being a part of that group, I tapped into a power much greater than myself that helped me to be a much fuller, truer version of my own self. Mumodzi Murimpampu. Thank you.